Welcome to the Organic Filaments Network. I'm Sher Ali Khan. In December 2018, Sudan erupted not suddenly, but after decades of military dictatorship, neglect, and violent repression. Across the country, people rose with the chant, Hurriya, Salam, Wa Adala, freedom, peace, and justice. A mass movement took shape that demanded not just regime change, but a new world. It was women who led marches, youth who built the resistance committees, workers who shut down the cities, and it was artists like today's guest who made memory into a form of struggle. Assil Diab, known as SudaLove, is a Sudanese street artist whose murals of revolutionaries and martyrs have become a visual archive of Sudan's unfinished revolution. From the sit-in at Army headquarters to the June 3rd massacre, her work refuses silence. In a time when Sudan is being erased from the headlines and its people from life, her work insists on remembering. Today we speak about the weight of grief, the aesthetics of uprising, gender in public space, and the slow death of solidarity. Like, share, and subscribe, and support us at buymeacoffee.com/Organic Filaments Network. Welcome to the show.
What you said earlier about the chants during the protests in Sudan, I just I
Yeah,
just I just said it the way it's usually said.
I want to begin with your return to Sudan as a teenager after growing up abroad. What did you encounter culturally, politically, and emotionally during that time period?
I mean, it was a shock to really live there. I remember when I was 16, I went back there and I enrolled myself into high school for the first time, or not the first time in high school, but the first time in, studying in Sudan as an adult. And my entire family left. I was just there with my grandma and my uncle. And it was just simple things like going to the store, being gullible, just not really knowing how to navigate through Sudan if it's not with somebody else or somebody who really knows the area. Even Sudanese jokes or like sayings or things I just had a hard time, understanding. So I was very still fresh. And once I joined the school and I lived there for a while by myself, I considered by myself because I really did do everything outside by myself. Like I said, I was with my grandma. It was different economically, politically, socially, religiously for me. There was a lot to take in, and I felt very unfamiliar with where I come from.
You've said you didn't always feel Sudanese enough. Did art help you enter the story of Sudan, not just as an observer, but as someone with a stake in it?
Definitely. I mean, graffiti and art made me like really dive into my ethnicity, and hence why I chose the name SudaLove. I always say this story in every interview. Once I started to gain that knowledge through the conversations with my father, and then also just talking to people, especially the older people in Sudan, is how I got to know where I come from, and also everyone that contributed to society. And then, that's why I chose the name SudaLove. Is my way of taking Sudan with me everywhere and speaking about Sudan. And so it's a way for me to talk about what's happening and my background. Even here in the U.S., like most of the time, I use SudaLove instead of Assil, and it's a conversation starter and
Mhm.
so on and so forth.
Sudanese society places intense pressure on women to remain private, modest, and quiet. What was your family relationship like to this? What did it mean to defy it on a certain level?
There's always what you are told to be and do as a woman or a man within the house, and then there's
Mm.
what's expected of you outside. Um, and I think I was lucky enough to have a balance between that with what I had in my home and outside. And some may also find that I'm not really following because, especially from the religious aspect, especially because I'm not really wearing the hijab. So I know some people outside might not see that as being religious, but what happens in the house and within myself is something that's different. And what I feel is religious and what I think is religious greatly varies from what everybody might think is or isn't. And I also believe that when it comes to feminism or being a feminist or being a female, sorry, I'm not a feminist, but I think people classify me as being a feminist is because of what they think I represent, and it's not necessarily what I choose to represent. Is what I represent in the sense of what I look like. And in that form, that's where people classify you accordingly, and that's how they treat you accordingly and talk to you accordingly. I think I really understood what that means when I was a female and wearing my normal clothing and being in the street and talking to people from all walks of life, the rich, the poor, the old, the young, the people that live in the villages and the people that live in the cities. I think I really got to know the gist of things, especially what a Sudanese female is, what is expected of her to be, and also especially what a feminist is, because I think I found out that I'm definitely not a feminist. But like I said, I was classified as, and I knew how also to navigate people to try to divert from that notion and into becoming who I really am.
And I think this relates to another question I had regarding how did Islam figure in your experience, or in Sudan, how does the religion sort of govern or create a social and political structure?
I think Islam, it shaped the culture that I worked within, more or less. As a woman, being in the streets, especially late at night, that protection, I think a lot of it was derived from what is or how is a woman protected, especially when she's around all these Muslim men in a society, what's expected of and what they're supposed to do and they're not supposed to do. And I use that as my defense as well in certain situations. I use it also as protection, whether it's protecting myself from other people, other men, or it's protecting myself from people in general because of what I'm actually doing. And again, this is my profession, not just a hobby. I really use Islam into classifying what I can and can't do in public and personally and in all situations. I remember this niqabi girl came coming up to me. She was fully covered, just the eyes out, and she's like, "How did you convince your father or your brother or whoever, the male figure in the family, to to pursue your passion and make this as a profession?" I've never been asked anything like this before. You know what I mean? And the question in itself, gave me a background of where she comes from, what she has to deal with, and that barrier between us, I felt like was very just extremely interesting to know that we're from the same area, from the same country, two different walks of life. I didn't have to ask permission to be a graffiti artist from anyone. I mean, I did struggle with it in the beginning. I had to lie a lot about what I'm doing, especially in Sudan, because my family was afraid of what could happen to me. But I felt like, especially with Islam, I had to always negotiate between expression and expectation, um, and the limits without dishonoring what a Muslim woman is. Just to sum it up, and what she can or cannot do.
What first drew you to the wall, to graffiti, stencil, and public art?
I mean, street art is a very direct art form. You don't really need permission, even though I try to break that barrier by asking permission from people that owns these houses or these walls. And um, the wall is a very public, a very loud, it's very unfiltered space, And I chose to have my work being always put into these walls versus having it in a gallery where I invite a few 20 something people to come see it and then just go home and that's it. You know what I mean? After a little bit of cocktail. But with the walls, it's indefinite. It's always there. And like I said, it's not filtered. Like you're talking to everyone. And whatever you put on there is a message. How people understand it is how they understand it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just painting on wall just gave me like helped me gain truth and spread the truth as well.
That's really beautiful. When you began painting, what challenges did you face, like materials wise, curfews, censorship, and other constraints that may have came up in practicing your craft?
When I began painting, other than the stuff we talked about earlier about being a female and stuff like that, I think it's my second problem was materials. I couldn't find spray paint anywhere in Africa, let alone Sudan. So I had to fly back and forth to Qatar a few times to go get um, a large number of spray paints. So I think before I left Sudan before the war, I think I had around 700 and something spray cans in my house, which I think now are either stolen or I don't know where they're stashed. Painting with just paint, normal wall paint, it takes forever. You know, just like when you paint a room and then you have to leave the room for like 2 days or something until it dries up. Imagine doing that with an actual painting where you want to do layers and layers on top of layers, you know what I mean, to get your portrait, whatever, together. So also finding, I'm not going to say finding the actual wall, it's where I'm painting. So every experience is different. Some areas I feel very safe, some areas I'm in danger. I'm actually in danger. And it's also like how houses, mainly the houses, especially in the outskirts of Khartoum, how houses are built are usually using mud or cow dung as well. They put it together. So that surface as well, I couldn't really work with, so I have to find other. It's 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 not just taking your spray pen and going to paint. You have to study the area and the environment you're working with as well. Because you can be
Yeah.
inspired, or they can. A lot of my paintings were wiped out right after I painted because some people just didn't want to have it in their area, you know, or the subject that I was painting they were against. I did a lot of portraits of people that contributed, who I felt like contributed to society. And I thought it's not just a personal thought, it's collective because of what I read on Google. For example, the first woman on the radio, Ashal Falatia, you know, I had painted her. I painted Fatima Ahmed Ibrahim, the first woman in the parliament. That was wiped out like 20 minutes after I painted that portrait because people don't like communists. I don't have to like a communist to, you know, as some people do other things. You know, we can't
Yeah.
really sum up human beings to one aspect, you know, but with with, and I found out also through art. It didn't really just tell me about other people. It told me how to deal with people. It gave me character as well, and it strengthened my character where I felt really lost before that, being just everywhere and not really having a home and traveling so much because my dad was a Sudanese ambassador for 15 years. So he was stationed in first, I was born in Romania, Bucharest, Romania. Who goes? What is? I've never seen any Sudanese person living in Romania. My sister was born in Jordan, so we traveled a lot as a child and as an adult. So, and the schools I went to, there's people from everywhere. I just didn't know what to really attach to. So, painting really gave me that.
Yeah. So before the revolution, how did was there was there a culture of public art or street art, and was there also a culture of dissent? Were there other artists or other languages of protest that were circulating at that time against the
Be-
dictatorship
Before
and
the
those?
protest, I really personally didn't really see graffiti. That was my main, because I was living in Qatar. That was my main reason why I sort of moved to Sudan for like a couple of years, that I can introduce it. During then, there is where I saw some people who were enthusiasts and also doing some stuff with some murals with just paint. Before all of that, before I came to Sudan, I did see a lot of sayings or sentences or verses from poets or poetry that was said during the protest that was painting on the walls around Sudan, and that was using a charcoal, just black
Interesting.
charcoal on the walls, or clay, for example. We use a lot of clay, especially in paintings of anything. There was a lot of that in around Sudan, but not really murals per se, or nothing elaborate. Yeah.
When the revolution broke out in 2018, what were people truly fighting for at that time period? I know there was the economic trigger, the crisis that sort of instigated those protests, but in your mind, how do you view the revolution after so many years of dictatorial rule?
I think different people were fighting for different things. Not all Sudanese were fighting for the same problems. Yeah, the prices of bread and gas, or the electricity cuts or whatever. I think everyone had their own issues. There's people fighting the Islamic regime. There's people who are just um fighting for their own personal rights, whether it's just more freedom or freedom in the media, for example. There's journalists out there who are trying to have their stuff taken off social media and getting arrested for reporting. There's um, there's people fighting the injustices happening in Darfur or otherwise, in Kassala or otherwise. There's all sorts of battles that were, we all came together to just get rid of the main problem and to get Umar al-Bashir off of power after 30 years of dictatorship. And, we managed to do that. And I think this time I saw a lot of the diaspora coming back. It's not just the people who were in Sudan. A lot of people, including myself, were not even living there. We didn't have to go back, but enough was enough. There's so much going on. Sudan is the most fertile land in the world. There's no reason for us to be displaced or going through all of that, especially not the price of food and stuff like that should be the basics. So I just think people, especially in 2019, there was a lot of killing, and I think people just had enough of that, and that is why there was more of the million marches coming up. Because I used to protest before 2019, it was just a small number of people. It used to get dispersed really fast. Um, but with 2019 coming up, there was more and more people, and then we have a lot of millions march, was like millions and millions of people coming out, and I think that's when people really didn't care about death. We just wanted our land back and our just normal
Can
living
you
standards.
talk a little bit about the dictatorship itself? Like, what is the legacy of that dictatorship, and the brutality of that dictatorship?
I can't really say
Yeah,
much. I'll tell you what I know. I don't think I'm the expert in politics in general. I'm just all for peace. you know,
yeah.
I think the main problem was the lack of freedom in speech, the injustices happening to women, and the killings of people, like I said, in Darfur, otherwise, the rapes, the injustices, and the extreme corruption of. I think me and my friends or anyone that I know, nobody's ever called police or for help. Once they're involved, it gets worse. They steal your stuff. You can call them to have you have a burglar in your house to come check your house for fingerprints, and they end up stealing stuff. So there's a lot of really disgusting corruption. We have electricity cuts for like 8 hours a day, all sorts of stuff. And like I said, there is no reason to, because the Sudanese people, as a collective of human beings, they're one of the nicest and purest hearted people I know. So I don't understand how people like that could lead us or even make laws for this land or this country or these people. So that is where I think the real problem was.
You've described the resistance committees as the revolutionary soul of that movement. What made them so powerful and so inspiring?
I think the committees are every revolution's heartbeat. They make They organize the protests. They give you the locations. They make sure you are protected. They do protect you once you abide by their, whether you do abide or not by the way they're organizing things. Um, I think they embodied what real democracy is. To sum it up, I think all these committees, they did what the governments can't do, and they really used the youth to really bring Umar al-Bashir down. It's how this was done, is through these committees, resistance committees that were around. They did things silently, quietly, but extremely powerfully, as we can see. And if it wasn't for them, I don't think this revolution, the military sit, and all this other stuff would have came about, to be honest with you.
What type of work would these committees do, just to give an example?
Like I said, they organize the protests. They even to the point that they do the flyers. They have team leads. It's like a whole organization of things. They give you a spot to meet up, where you're gonna head to, the whole map of where you're gonna go. They have their own teams to make sure you are protected by like keeping a lookout on the streets and stuff like that. And honestly, how I dealt with my project is having it as a small resistance community, because the people who were interested in my Martyrs graffiti project, the way they came to me and presented their interest, I would say no in the beginning, because honestly, at the beginning, I really thought I was gonna go about and paint everyone by myself and go home. But they did come up to me and said, "You do need protection, and we're here to protect you." And that's how we came a team. I put my life into 8 to 10 people that I've never met before, and we don't know each other, and they did the same. We just basically trusted our lives, and we protected each other, and we would plan out how to paint and how to go to these neighborhoods, and who's going to drive, who's going to come out, who's going to keep on a lookout, who's going to talk to the parents. It's yeah, it had to be that way. It had to be these organizations, these committees. Otherwise, there's so many people around. There's so many, like I said, so many issues people are fighting for, but they brought everyone together and really made them focus on the cause and why we need to come together for this one problem, which is Umar Bashir and his Islamic regime. They need to be out. That's all.
You've said that just existing as a woman in public in Sudan is an act of resistance in one of your interviews. And how did the revolution open or suspend those gendered boundaries in your mind?
I saw a great shift when, before the revolution, when I was painting these Sudanese icons that contributed to society, versus when the revolution came about and I started doing portraits of martyrs. I saw it and I felt it and I heard it, that shift on how people view me. Before the revolution, I had comments on my social media saying things like, "Oh, don't bring these European traditions and art forms to us." I'm like, what does that even mean? Bring this European art form? It's just art, you know what I mean? But I think they were talking about the fact that I was a female and I was just painting away in the streets freely. And there's certain occupations that women carry out in the streets, especially in Sudan. You have the tea ladies, for example. You don't see women doing construction, for example. You don't see women in the streets like that unless they're going somewhere. So to have this as an actual career and a profession was very confusing to a lot of people, including my family. I had an uncle tell me, You're at that age where you need to get married. You need to find yourself a respectable job that's behind four walls."
Yeah.
And he was a doctor. My answer was, "I make more money than you as a doctor in Sudan, so I don't know what you're talking about." And that's me showing him, or saying, I wasn't trying to be rude, but I really said this in the most respectful way. Like, you're in Sudan, we have more bigger issues to deal with. You as a doctor being in Sudan, not making enough money like that, you know, versus what I get commissioned for outside. So I get my commissions not in Sudan, but all the stuff I did in Sudan is for free. I do it outside. I make my money, come back to Sudan, and is where I put it to help the revolution in the community and stuff like that. I think I summed it up for him. Yeah.
What was quite interesting was the role of social media during that period. Like, for example, Allah Salah, that woman on the car, her clip
And that's a lot.
circulated a lot, and she became sort of this global icon at that time.
Yeah.
Uh, and there were many women who remained unnamed in those protests. But what was the role of like social media and just you know these sort of like young figures that emerged, and how did that sort of mark a turning point in the movement?
Allah Salah, I guess she represented a hierarchy of resistance or suffering in women. The visual aspect of it was very powerful. She wasn't saying anything nobody else was saying, but I think the dressing of the top, especially the white one, women used to wear this, especially in times of war, in case their husbands come deceased, they would just wrap them with the top, with this fabric, and that's the Islamic way to bury somebody. So because it's purity, right? The symbolism of what she represented, I think, stood for a lot of the women suffering and the injustice is happening in Sudan. And that's why it was
Yeah.
so powerful. Yeah. I think, I personally stand in full solidarity with Palestine, with Black Lives Matter, with Sudanese women. I just do, I do wish these women would make more space for Sudanese voices. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
when Allah Salah came about, I think she did that. She came in people's profile pictures and celebrities' stories,
Yeah.
and I think she did that as a female, and that's why it's so great. All my Sudanese women are
Mm-hmm.
doing something, whether it's being in the streets, whether it's from the houses. I know people that never left the house, but they were doing all these like flyers and handmade t-shirts and all these ideas for protesting and stuff. Not even never left the house. Can't say their names,
Yeah.
but there's so many that if there was a way for me to bring up all these women that did stuff, I wish I had like a book or something of their pictures and what they did during the protest. But there's so many. Um, yeah.
And you once said that the sit-in felt like a new city briefly. Did it feel like freedom, or was it always under threat?
What do you mean? Like I
Or
felt
did you feel like it was a temporary sort of phenomena that was taking place, or was it an achievement at that time?
that's an interesting question. I think it was both. So while I was in the sit-in, the way I felt was just power. I felt a lot of power, a lot of energy, and a lot of resistance from everyone that was around me. There were so many people, again, from all walks of life. But I was scared at some point because of the uncertainty of it all. You're in an area where we're all together in the same space. What if they just throw a bomb at us? You know what I mean? We're all gonna go. And it's not just our lives that are going to go. These are the most powerful people doing things right now, all in the same space. If we're gone, then that's it for Sudan. And I think that was my fear. It was a constant thing. It's just that thought. Yeah. Because
No, continue.
I was just gonna say, because in the sit-in, I think that's where all the ideas and the organizations and the committees and the resistances and the setups and plans. That's where everything. That was the headquarters of everything that was gonna happen moving forward. And I think we just didn't know if we were safe or not. And obviously, people found out that we weren't. A lot of people lost their lives on the June 3rd massacre.
That day changed everything. What did that moment mark for you politically and personally, as an artist,
Devastation,
as a
devastation, devastation. I've been there. I left my safe zone. I left Qatar. And I'm not talking personal. I'm just giving you one person that did something. I left my safe zone being with my family and my parents and my Qatar is so comfortable. And I left that to be doing that in Sudan for no reason, living there by myself. There's so many people that did that. The martyr, Muhammad Matar, Blue for Sudan hashtag. He just finished his master's in the UK, and he came to Sudan for his sister's wedding, and he was shot during the massacre. He was supposed to go back to the UK. There's so many people, but being there for such a long time and doing something, getting up every day and going out to paint, and then having the energy to do that again, and then it's not painting. It wasn't just painting. It was meeting the family, talking to the mother, and the mother's freaking out because they just shot or bombed their son or her daughter, or it could be the mother who was killed. Just to be in the house like that, where the silence was so uncomfortable because of there was so much sadness and loss, and then having the strength to do that again the next day to go another house. We did 40 martyrs, and then coming to the sit-in where I'm like, okay, we're almost there. We're almost there. I was just sitting there waiting for it. I stopped painting at that point, really. I was doing it in the beginning, but then I stopped painting because I really thought this was it. This is where, there's a happy ending here somewhere. And for the massacre to happen,
Yeah.
it was a huge hit. I don't know what to say about that, really. Yeah.
And it's a major shift in your painting, in the sense, the question of martyrs, right? For you, what do martyrs signify? And when you began painting martyrs, was it more about mourning, or was it a sort of form of defiance against the existing order, or something else?
Personally, for me, especially at that time, I wasn't very knowledgeable about Sudan or the politics of Sudan. I didn't even know why Omar Bashir people didn't like him. I just didn't know anything except what I noticed personally is so many people like my age at the time were dying.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy to me that I would always find out that they were the sole or the main breadwinner of the house. So it's helping out
Yeah.
everybody. It's always somebody who's going to college or studying and doing something, and for them to be killed and then to come up as a number on a major TV channel was that's all the injustice I needed to know, and that's where I wanted to paint them. So I wanted to force people to see them because the media wasn't doing it for us. I just don't want to just see a picture of him in college back in the day. I want to see him today, and I want to know where he lives. Like, I want people to know where this person lived. I wanted them to envision everything. And once we started doing some martyrs' houses, people knew that this was the martyrs' house, and people started contributing financially and also emotionally. All the women in the area would come and sit with the mother all day and console her and stuff like that. So that's really what I was against, is don't, why are you killing people? They're protesting peacefully and it's just for the price of bread or whatever.
How do you choose to represent someone? Color, pose, softness, shadow. What does each of these murals attempt, when you're going through the process of making a mural for a martyr?
Before, for a martyr, so I wouldn't have, most of the time I wouldn't have their pictures or their portraits before I actually go and paint. So that's why I make it a fact to visit the families like a day or two before the actual day that I wanted to paint, to sit with them and also ask them for a picture. And believe it or not, some people don't even have it. They don't have phones. They don't have a picture anywhere. I went to this martyr's house and they went to to like a basement where they keep like the old furniture and like really look
Mhm.
through. They got me one picture, photo that had a lot of like sand and debris on it. So um, uh, I always ask the family what their favorite picture is. That's how I choose the photo. With the mother, especially her favorite picture of her son or daughter, she would give that to me. And then if they're not smiling, I'll try to have like a little smile in there or something. And then I would really look at the face, and the eyes usually do it for me, where I put a lot of emphasis is,
Mhm.
it's the key to the soul. So I put a lot of emphasis in the eyes, I would say, in every picture. The skin color, if you can see my work, is changes all the time. It can be blue, it can be purple, and I don't think people thought it was on purpose. Really, it started off being not on purpose because I really didn't have skin color spray paint, so I had to improvise. But people like that too. Then some people like the skin color. I liked it too. I like the showing people, all the various forms of what the Sudanese people look like. Because I don't think one of the issues was the tribalism in these protests and these problems. So I really wanted people to look at that we're all different too. That was another point of these portraits. Yeah.
You mentioned the families. So, how did they respond to your presence, like the act of painting, of remembering on the wall? Was it positive or negative or?
In the beginning, people didn't want me to. All I kept saying was, "What's a drawing gonna do? It's not gonna bring back my son." And also in the beginning, people were very angry and sad. So that's a very dangerous combination. But with time, people started calling not just me, my teammates or people that don't even know me. Could you please call that girl that paints to come paint the martyr? It kept happening a lot. I used to get messages on social media, Twitter, whatever. Like, people didn't really know who was doing it. And in the beginning, they just knew it was a girl eventually. But yeah, in the beginning, the looks, the stuff that's been said to me wasn't, people were confused, like, why in the midst of all this would you want to paint? But now it's like the project of the revolution. Everybody's painting a martyr somewhere. Everybody. It was just an idea, and that's how ideas grow. You just gotta trust it.
I found it interesting. The state often erases your murals, and you mentioned that earlier, or other actors, and yet you continue to. You also used to repaint a lot of those murals. What does that feeling of repetition mean to you as an artist, as someone committed to your work?
It's resistance. It's another form
Yeah.
of resistance. And the whole point was, okay, graffiti is not supposed to be there forever anyway. So I wasn't really expecting it to be there forever. But for me to stand about 4 hours or 5 hours in June or July in Sudan in this heat and coming home to no electricity, so I can't even shower and I go home. The fact that it was wiped out like 10 minutes later because you don't like this person was just, in the beginning, like the first time it happened or the second, Fatima Ahmed Ibrahim, I really cried. I cried and I cried and I was like, because of how tired I was of doing these icons. This was before the revolution again. My stuff was wiped out before the revolution. And then when it kept happening during the revolution, I'm like, this is what resistance is. And to sum it up, is to keep on going, to wake up the next day and to keep on going and get it done. I've lost so many people in my team. So many people quit on me. So many people just ghosted. You know what I mean? There's other people who came about, and I had to make that decision whether I wanted to continue. And I have zero energy from the night before, and then I have to wake up the next day and gather up a new team and explain to them why I have to draw this painting that was wiped out. Like I really have energy issues until today. Like I was so tired, but it's all part of the plan. Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about the word martyrs, if you translate it to Arabic or where I'm at Urdu, Shaheed,
Shaheed.
it carries both a spiritual and revolutionary meaning. And what does it mean in Sudan today, from your perspective?
What does Shaheed mean in Sudan? Um,
Like in the current context?
Automatically somebody who's first of all going to heaven, somebody who I think the first thing people look at is somebody who died during this revolution. I don't think Shaheed can be anything. Could be you can die in fire and be a Shaheed. You can drown in Islamic terms, but in Sudan, the only reason you would call a Shaheed is somebody like even the people who died in the fire and everything. We don't even refer to them really because that term specifically, like if we had a dictionary for Sudan, that would definitely be somebody who died during that protests or the revolutions or otherwise. Somebody who really gave their life for us, for the remaining of us.
And I thought it was kind of interesting what you were mentioning earlier about the senseless people your age dying around you, right? And do you consider your work as part of an effort to hold space for those who are made disposable by our brutal state? Or do you see it as something else, like in a broader sense?
I don't get that.
Like disposability, meaning like certain bodies are made marked for death, right? Like
Yeah.
while others aren't. In a way, your paintings sort of provide space to those who aren't always remembered. And
Yeah.
I was just thinking about how you situate your work in that broader context, like holding space for those who may not be as privileged or
Oh
may
yeah.
not be as visible or
Oh
those
yeah.
things.
Like the icons that I was doing before the revolution, there are various people that are alive who contributed to society in a positive manner. And it's not my personal thoughts on them, it's what people told me. Um, um, please paint so and so because, he helped me out with school tuition. I had a lot of people tell me to draw Mahmoud Abdul Aziz, who's like the Sudanese Bob Marley, because he really
Interesting.
helped out. Yeah, he really helped out a lot of people. I didn't know that. I really didn't know that. I used to see him on TV. I'm like, you know, but I really didn't know the his impact on when I went to his area in Mazad Bahri and I started painting him. Like people just came out of their houses, they put their chairs and brought like some coffee and were giving out to their neighbors and it was like a little festival event thing while I was painting. It was really interesting. Imagine if stuff like that was sponsored by like bigger people, that you can really give and shine light on so many people that contributed in a place that where people are silenced and they're not. As a journalist yourself, you would have never been able to go and talk about things as freely as you would otherwise.
After Bashir's fall, the revolution was sort of betrayed. What did the betrayal feel like to you? And in Darfur, a genocide continues, and people are starving, fleeing, being raped, and killed. The world has been kind of silent about that, and I wanted your perspective on that.
I don't know how to say this. My personal take on this is even when I was doing the Martyrs graffiti project, after that came the coronavirus and then started doing a coronavirus campaign,
Yeah.
self-initiated. And then after some time I left because I realized I've been like going back and forth for 7, 8 years. Since I graduated, I've never had a career. I don't really have except for the stuff I did in Sudan, obviously. But I was growing up. I wanted to really look into career and marriage, possibly, and stuff like that. And then, so I thought when I saw that the younger people and I saw that there was a collective called Jidari the Shuhada or something. Like there's a whole group of people came together, called themselves the Martyrs Graffiti Project or painters or something, and they started doing painting all the martyrs in the revolution. There's a couple of them like that. So I'm like, you know what? They can take this on now. I've passed it forward, and it wasn't neglecting anything. It was just I needed self reflection. I needed some time, especially after the revolution and being by myself away from my family for so long. Like I just needed a break. So I came back. I didn't know coming back was going to bring me to the United States. I took a break and I still saw that happening even when I was here. It got to the point that people didn't even know I was the one to start the Martyrs Graffiti Project. People didn't know.
Yeah.
People come up to me like, "Did you see that there's this people doing the martyrs?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's amazing." So I think people in general now are taking a break because there's so much happening around the world as we can see. And I think I love what you said earlier. Should I say it or do you want to say it yourself about the
I,
life and death thing? I just found that so interesting that what you said about we were so focused on, or people are so focused on living and, the project in itself focused on the dead.
yeah.
I think that's where I am at now. I think when you said it, it really touched me because I really right now it's like I am just sitting here waiting for something that was it whether it's World War III because like there's so much going on, or is it the Judgment Day, Qiyamah? Like which one is it at this point? Because this cannot be real. There's so much injustice happening, and it's like now I feel like at that time the visual aspect had to come with the revolution, but now when there's actual war, what comes with that? I don't know. I really don't know. What I felt like I can contribute did make sense at the time, but what can I contribute now to a country? There's not even an airport for me to go back. I have to go to like way to the outskirts of Port Sudan, come back, slowly coming to Khartoum. Might make it, might not make it on the way. Who knows? I don't know what comes after this. If you want to say personally, I came out here to seek asylum, so when I go back, I have protection somehow. Whether it's through it, not because I want to be here. I don't want to be here, but because of what's happening in the world, I'm forced to be here, and I'm forced to find citizenship or otherwise that it's not my own, so I can protect myself from death, which is, I think, inevitable. It's happening anyway, whether I'm here or there. It's just happening. Um, what do we do from here? I'm not really sure. We need something bigger. Was it weapons? I don't know. Really, I really don't know.
And I think like the question of like grief and melancholy isn't really, discussed a lot. And I think there's so many movements happening, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Palestinian solidarity. But it feels like, like even online, like Sudan is often ignored. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I feel that way, but I also don't blame people for ignoring it because even the way some of these protest. First of all, I seem to always jump to one conclusion, but what's happening in Sudan is basically the way people see it is us doing this to ourselves. Even though it's like a lot of tribalism and there's Chad, there's the rapid security force, there's a lot of where they come from. There's a lot of backstories to what's happening, but I don't blame people who are watching this saying they still sum it up to you're still doing that to yourselves versus Israel is out here really people, children in front of everyone. So that's clear as day. But in Sudan it's not. It's way more complicated. Our history is way more complicated than we can personally sum up. I can't even sum it up for you right now. So I don't think it's
Yeah.
as easy as people think. Also, we don't have people out there right now that are filming things with in Palestine. I'm in so many groups that are on Telegram and all these untraced apps where I see what's happening from people right there in Palestine. I know what's going on. So, and also there's a lot of media going there and reporting on what's happening versus how, how we were allowed to talk about what's going on in Sudan. Even when we were there, and it doesn't have to be a Sudanese person, it can be a journalist coming from anywhere. You still won't be able to cover everything truthfully. So it's
Do
it's
do you
it's not
think
as
do you think like anti-blackness, racialized or being racialized as African, Muslim, or peripheral makes
definitely.
make? makes Sudanese less visible in like global solidarity networks, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. Because hunger, war, starvation, protests happening in Africa and Sudan for 100 years, especially in Sudan for 30 years.
Yeah,
At least, you know, since Omar al-Bashir, it's been going on for 30 years, so it's nothing new. Um, not that not that the Palestinian conflict is not as old or older, but the tribalism of what's happening right now only solidifies what people think of Africa and African people or black
yeah,
people is because we can't even us as black people before we're Arabs, we can't even come together and divide this land properly. Just a few years ago is where, you know, the South and the North were separated, each with their own passports and um, which
yeah,
makes no sense. Together, we were the largest country in Sudan. Together, we can end hunger in Africa. Together, we can do a lot of things. But again, it's always about tribalism until today. Like we don't mix, we don't really mix like that as tribes. People don't even like
yeah,
me when I say we're Afro Arabs, you know.
yeah,
Um, because I don't think because they don't like being Arabic, because we are Muslim, we do speak Arabic. I think it's the fact that other Arabs don't like us. And I think we know this. I think we know this, and I think we tend to live accordingly and deal with our problems accordingly. Even politically, even on TV, I think we automatically we're like, okay, that's my issue. I'll solve it by myself right here. You know, you can know about it, but you know, nobody has to do anything. It's like we're okay with dealing with our own issues by ourselves. And I think other people know this as well. It's just so obvious that people just don't talk about it.
yeah. So now being based in the US, which is far from Sudan, and it's kind of your home, you know, in a certain way, you could say like your family's roots are from there. And
I'm from
what does
Sudan.
that,
I'm Sudanese. I'm from Umdurman. I'm Sudanese.
yeah,
Yeah.
how does that displacement feel like, you know, like for you just living in the US, just being a Sudanese in the US
I think
and
first of
a
okay,
Muslim?
sorry. I've made up the loss of not being brought up in Sudan. I think I've made that up in the couple of years that I went there by myself growing up. It was like a overdose of ethnicity. You know, I made sure I know everything. I took like my German friend. We went to like, for example, 8 hours away from Khartoum to stay in this village called Moody, just because. So
Interesting.
I made sure I travel a lot around Sudan. Like how we used to make tea, we'll just milk the sheep in the morning or the goat, and then make our tea in the morning. That was that. We'll get buckets of water from a well and then come take a shower. Like it was really like that kind of life. Not everywhere is like that. It's just different areas represent different things in Sudan and different tribes and different culture. So I made sure I'm accustomed and know all of it. So I'm never gonna
And
be
yeah,
non-Sudanese. I know some people even say the way I look is not typical, I think, but I'm really, really into the whole thing of my background and my ethnicity and stuff like that.
yeah.
I don't think I
And
answered that properly, but yeah.
like what gives you strength to keep creating? What gives you strength to keep creating, especially when the struggle feels so heavy at times as an artist?
What gives me the strength is knowing that the outcome is death. When I know the outcome is
Yeah,
death, there's really no cares given because it's do something and leave a legacy or just die. And the thought of
yeah,
even when I was painting the martyrs, I would ask the mother like, I know that's her son, but like I know what do you love most about him and legacies that these people left, even if it's just for their families. I feel like these people were specifically chosen to die because they're the strongest. And because they're the strongest, these were the people who went to protest. They tend to be the people who can give and who can leave a legacy and who can resist injustice. And that's the
yeah.
only motivation always.
And are you working on any new projects or collaborations you'd like to share with us? And, you know, I know you've you're doing a lot of different sort of things. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I'm currently featured in a documentary that's out in UK cinemas. It's called War Paint, and it represents a bunch of artists from different areas, Ukraine, UK, and the only one representing Sudan is me. And it just shows you how these women use art in a time of conflict and as resistance. It's a great
yeah.
film. I think people should watch. There's also another one coming out by Mazen Gamar and
Oh,
Raya.
interesting.
Um, yeah, it's called Medania. It's still in the making. It's fully focused on the Sudanese revolution and the artists that contributed in the revolution, whether it's through actual paintings or poetry or rap music, could be any form of art that was carried on during the Sudanese revolution. I do
Interesting.
have my own footage that I'm currently looking for funds for my own project of this Martyrs graffiti project, which hopefully can come out a couple of years from now.
Your work is always really inspiring.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking out the time to appear on the Organic Filaments Network. This was our conversation with Assil Diab. In a time of amnesia and complicity, her work holds the names of the dead and refuses to let them vanish. This is not just art, it is a practice of revolutionary memory. Like, share, and subscribe and support us at buymeacoffee.com/organic filaments network. Until next time, this is Sher Ali Khan.